Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to be walking you through 5 different strategies that you can utilize at home to improve neglect and inattention after stroke. This isn't going to be a video covering why it happens, but if you would like me to make a video on that, leave me a comment down below and let me know. So let's go ahead and get into the first strategy that you can use at home to improve neglect and inattention. And it is a strategy called anchoring. Now, if you've watched any of my TikToks or Instagram Reels, you may have seen this technique there. Anchoring is kind of what it sounds like. You are giving yourself an anchoring point, someplace that you can point your gaze towards to work on that neglect and inattention. So I'll give you an example. What I typically recommend to my clients is to get some sort of really bright duct tape, maybe like a lime green or a bright yellow, or even some bright Post-it notes. And my favorite example is on door jambs. So putting that bright tape or Post-it on the side of the door jamb that you have got your neglect or inattention. Now we know typically left-sided neglect is more common. That is due to the anatomy and how our perceptual system works. But we can have right-sided inattention and neglect as well. So you would put that tape or the Post-it note on either side of the door jamb. And the point is, as you're mobilizing and walking through your home, you are going to be looking and trying to find that anchoring point as you're going through doorways. So you don't go through the doorway until you find your anchoring point. Now, another good example of this is, let's say that you have trouble finding all of the food on your plate. You could have someone put an anchoring point using that bright tape or Post-it note on whichever side of the plate you have trouble looking to. So before you finish your meal, you're going to be scanning across that plate and looking for that brightly colored tape and see if you've got all the food on your plate. So the second technique that I want to share today is something called visual scanning, and particularly using the lighthouse technique. So a lighthouse shines a light out into the water so that ships can see and they don't run into the shoreline, so they can see the shoreline. But the light is kind of going back and forth, sending out that signal. So we can kind of think of our head as the lighthouse. So we would be moving it from left to right, right to left, and looking in our environment to really scan and see what we have going on. Because neglect and inattention, they are perceptual issues. It's not that you don't have the vision, because some people do lose part of their vision after a stroke. That's not the case with neglect and inattention. It's that you forget and don't find or pay attention to whichever side is affected. So we have to start bringing more attention to that affected side, and visual scanning is a great way to do that. I've got 2 activities that I tell people to try at home, so I want to share those with you. The first to improve your visual scanning is using a game called I Spy. And you may have played this when you were a kid. I know I did, but you say, I spy with my little eye something red or green. You name a color of an object in the room, and then you have to scan and look for it. That game takes 2 people. So if you have someone who can be with you, tell that person to call out colors of objects on your affected side. You can scan through the room, name, all the different green objects that you see until you find the one that the person was thinking of. Now, the second activity that you can do is actually using Post-it notes, and I really like this one. You would get several Post-it notes and have someone else write, I don't know, maybe A through G, label them A through G, and then label 1 through 7. You would kind of mix those up, and you could do this in standing if you're stable enough, or sitting, but the Post-it notes would go on the wall in random order, and the person helping you would call out random letters, random numbers, and you have to scan to find them. So that's another really great activity you can do at home to work on your visual scanning. Now, the third technique that you can use is kind of a combination approach. It is utilizing visual scanning with a TENS unit. Now, disclaimer here, you need to make sure and check in with either your doctor or your therapist to clear you to use a TENS unit. It is a type of electrical stimulation and it's not right for everybody. So make sure that you get clearance to use it before going ahead and trying it. But the thought process is that you would put the TENS unit, which really is not meant to provide any muscle contraction or activation. It's meant to provide some stimulus in a sensory way. Oftentimes that's used for pain relief. But the TENS unit in this case may go on your upper trapezius on the affected side. You utilize it during some of those visual scanning techniques. And the point is that, again, you're just trying to bring more attention to that affected side. So that's why you put the TENS unit on the affected side. You start turning it up until you can feel it. And it's been shown in the evidence to produce even better effects than visual scanning by itself. Again, talk with a doctor, talk with your therapist, make sure that that would be right for you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our fourth technique, which is using a mirror. Now, this is different than mirror therapy, which is a strategy that I've talked about in other videos to improve hand function. In this case, we are specifically using the mirror to bring more attention to the affected side and to your perception. You don't have to get any fancy type of mirror. It just needs to be big enough so that you can see yourself in it. And I recommend this, like, let's say that you're doing exercises or you're getting dressed, something that you do every day. Set the mirror up in front of yourself. Watch how you're doing these things. Really make a point to look at your entire body. If you see one shoulder, look for the other. One knee, look for the other. Are your movements the same on both sides? Are you moving your affected side? Sometimes it just takes bringing that attention over to your affected side to really start making that brain-body connection. All right, the fifth and last technique that I want to talk to you about is using your affected side during daily activities. So this requires a lot of intentionality, and it can be combined, like I talked about, with the mirror. It can be combined with visual scanning. You don't have to use these different techniques in isolation. You can combine them. But let's say that you're working on getting dressed and you have a tendency to forget about your affected arm. So you get half your shirt on and the other one's just hanging out in space. Maybe you make a point. You know that you have another arm logically in your brain, but you don't perceive it. So that may include really using that visual scanning, looking over at your affected arm. And I know some people will say, it doesn't even feel like that's my arm. Like, whose arm is that? But, you know, if you try to move it and you see movement, that arm belongs to you. So try to be intentional and try to move that arm through normal motion, through normal activities. And like I said, if you need to combine it with the mirror, if you need to combine it with the visual scanning, you can. And see how that works out for you. So those are the 5 different strategies you can utilize for neglect and inattention at home. I hope that you found these techniques and strategies helpful. And I am gonna leave a link in the description below to where I found the evidence for these strategies in case you're interested in looking those up. And I'd love it too if you would leave me a comment down below and let me know what strategies have worked to help your neglect or your inattention. And as always, I'm gonna leave a link as well down in the description to sign up for my email list, which gets you 3 free stroke recovery tips and emails a week, as well as a free copy of my ebook, The Stroke Recovery Pocket Guide. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.